Rain hammered the window of a downtown coffee shop, and nobody noticed the man in the torn jacket sitting alone in the corner. His shoes were held together with tape. His hands trembled around a cup of water he could not afford to fill with coffee. What none of the strangers passing by could ever guess was that this man was worth more than every building on that street combined. He had given up his suits, his driver, his name, just to find one thing his billions could never buy: someone who would love him for exactly who he was, not for what he owned. Before we dive into this story, if you believe kindness still has the power to change lives, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. This channel is called Kindness Library, and every single day we bring you real, heartfelt stories about compassion, humility, and the quiet moments that remind us what truly matters. Now, let's get into today's story. His name was Daniel Whitfield, and at 38 years old, he had built a technology empire from nothing but a laptop and a stubborn belief in himself. Magazines called him a visionary. Investors called him brilliant. But lately, every woman who smiled at him seemed to be looking past his eyes and straight at his bank account. He had been engaged once, and 3 days before the wedding, he overheard his fiancée on the phone, laughing with a friend about how she could finally stop working once the ring was on her finger. He cancelled the wedding that same night and swore he would never let himself be fooled again. For months, Daniel buried himself in work, but the loneliness only grew heavier. Then one evening, watching the city lights from his penthouse window, he made a decision that his lawyers, his assistants, and his own mother would have called reckless. He decided to disappear. He handed his company over to his trusted vice president for 90 days, packed a single bag with old clothes, and stepped out into the world with nothing but $200 and a story that his name was simply Danny, a man who had lost his job and his apartment. The first night on the street, sleeping on a bench near a laundromat, taught him more about the world than any business degree ever had. People he once would have walked past now looked straight through him as if he were invisible. Some sneered. Some crossed the street. But some did not. It was on his 5th night, cold and hungry, that he met Maria Fuentes. She worked the late shift at a small diner on the corner of 9th Street, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and a bell that jingled every time the door opened. Daniel had wandered in just to escape the wind, expecting to be told to leave. Instead, Maria walked over, set down a plate of eggs and toast, and said, "This one is on the house tonight, honey. You look like you could use it." He tried to tell her he had no way to pay her back. She just laughed softly and said kindness was not something you kept score of. Over the following weeks, Danny returned to that diner almost every night. Maria always found a way to slip him a warm meal, sometimes claiming it was a mistake in the kitchen, sometimes simply refusing to let him say no. She would sit with him during her breaks, asking about his day, really listening, the way no one in his old glittering world ever had. She had no idea he had once closed multi-million-dollar deals. To her, he was just Danny, a man going through a hard season of life, and that was enough for her to care. One night, Maria told him about her son, Mateo, who dreamed of becoming an engineer but could not afford community college tuition. She worked double shifts just to keep food on the table, yet she still gave away plates of eggs to strangers on cold nights. Daniel realized in that moment that he had spent years surrounded by people chasing his money, while this woman, who had almost nothing, was the most generous person he had ever met. When his 90 days were finally up, Daniel returned to his company, put his suit back on, and did something he had been dreaming about for weeks. He arranged for a scholarship fund to be created in Mateo's name, and he personally paid off the mortgage on the small house Maria rented for her family. But he wanted to do something more meaningful than writing a check from behind a desk. He walked back into that diner one evening, wearing his old torn jacket one last time. Maria greeted him with the same warm smile she always gave, ready to bring him his usual plate. That was when he finally told her the truth, his real name, his company, and why he had spent those nights sitting in her diner. Maria stood frozen, tears filling her eyes, not because of the money, but because she realized that every kind word she had ever spoken to him had been completely real, given freely to a man she believed had nothing. Their story did not become a fairy tale overnight, but it became something far more powerful, a genuine friendship built on trust that no amount of money could have purchased. Daniel often says that those 90 days on the street taught him the one lesson his fortune never could, that true worth is not measured by what is in your bank account, but by what is in your heart. Somewhere out there today, someone is quietly being kind to a stranger, expecting absolutely nothing in return. That kindness might feel small in the moment, but it can change a life forever. So the next time you have the chance to help someone, take it. You never truly know who you might be sitting across from, and you never know how far your kindness might travel.